Hello and welcome to this look at economic geography. In this lecture, we're going to talk about the economic base model, and then we're going to look at the different sectors of the economy, and then take an examination of the evolution of economic geography. We're going to answer the questions: why, where, and when did certain shifts in the way we work, the way we produce, the way we consume, where, why, and when did these occur? And then we're going to wrap up our look at economic geography by taking a cultural examination at mass consumption, helping understand how our behavior as people, our culture, our mass consumption dictates and influences the way we work, the way that other parts of the world produce. So the concepts that we're going to talk about in this look, in this chapter, are going to be carried forward into our next chapter when we look at different levels of development around the world and understand, again, why, where, and when did these certain developments begin and how are they impacting people in those countries. But we're going to keep it simple in this look at economic geography. We're going to, again, talk about the economic base model so we understand how an economy grows. Looking at the specific sectors of the economy will help us identify where people work, where people used to work, what types of changes are taking place, and where are you going to fall into these different sectors. And then with the evolution, we're going to look at some examples of how our consumer behavior has impacted the cultural landscape around us. The image on your screen is a personal photo from the Domino's Sugar Factory in Baltimore's harbor. This image, I think, reflects the evolution of economic geography very well in Baltimore City. The factory itself is a reflection of our old economy, heavy industry, and the Baltimore Sugar Factory is the last remaining Baltimore Inner Harbor factory. Right across the water, you'll see some older facilities on the right-hand side. You'll see some older dock facilities that have been recreated to support a consumer society today. And then the skyline to the left reflects our modern economy, an economy based on the tertiary and quaternary sector. So consider this picture, go back to this picture as we talk about the different sectors of the economy and how our economy, our economic geography, has changed and continues to change. So our economic base model. Again, this model helps us understand how an economy grows. And like some of our other models, I encourage you to draw this model. This is really an important measure, an important tool for helping us understand different types of industries, different types of jobs, and also how an economy grows. So how an economy grows, a growing economy helps mostly everybody. And when we talk about economic development, when we hear about these political or economic ideas, the economic base model helps us simplify these ideas and understand how different events, changes, plans could potentially affect us. So here is the model. Again, you might want to pause here, just make sure that you're able to read it, you see the different terms, and again, I encourage you to draw it. The first two items that we're going to discuss are basic versus non-basic. And this is really important when we talk about this economic base model. You'll notice here that I have both of these terms circled in the model, basic industries and non-basic industries. Basic industries draw money from outside of your region. Non-basic industries circulate money within your region. Examples of basic sector activities. One would be Towson University. While Towson University does support a local population here in Baltimore County, think about where students come from. Students come from different counties throughout Maryland. Students come from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Connecticut, Massachusetts. So Towson University is able to draw money in from across the state and out of state. When you draw money in, you create jobs. So Towson University would be a basic sector industry. A couple of years ago, there was a campaign across the country, over 200 cities campaigned to attract Amazon HQ2, their second headquarters. with the idea being that Amazon is a company that draws in revenue from across the United States and other parts of the world. So by having these high-paying jobs in your community, you're going to grow local demand. So people that are working from Amazon are collecting their revenue or being paid by sources all over the country. And then they're using that money to spend locally. They spend locally at non-basic industries. Walmart, Target, a local cafe, your barber shop. These types of industries are important, and they're important because they meet the demand of a local consumer base. A local Walmart does not grow an economy. A local cafe does not grow an economy. A basic sector industry grows an economy. And when basic sector industries grow, they expand consumer buying power, they expand consumer demand, and ultimately they expand non-basic sector activities. So what I'm referring to is known as the multiplier effect. So for every job in the basic sector, more than just that job is created. So think about that person who is moving to Northern Virginia to work for Amazon, and their starting salary is $125,000. Now multiply that by 10,000, 15,000. You see a large number of relatively high-paid positions moving into a community. Again, the revenue source comes from across the United States. As those individuals move into Northern Virginia, they're going to need basic goods and services. So if we move 10,000 people into this Northern Virginia community, there's going to be more people going grocery shopping. There's going to be more people going out to eat. There's going to be more people that need to buy clothes, that need a haircut. There are more people that need childcare. So these non-basic sector activities expand when we introduce basic sector activities to a community. A few years ago, Black & Decker, which is located in Towson, was undergoing some changes, and there was concern that Black & Decker would leave the community. Black & Decker is a great example of a basic sector activity. If Black & Decker left, and people left Towson that worked there, it would be a bit of a vacuum. Individuals would leave the community and move elsewhere, take their wages, take their demand to another place. Sparrows Point in southeast Baltimore was the largest steel producer in the world in the mid-1900s. As the United States went through a process called deindustrialization, which we'll come back to shortly, Sparrows Point went from over 30,000 employees to none. The steel mill attracted money from all over the United States, supported very good middle-class, upper-middle-class jobs in southeast Baltimore County. All of those employees, those 30,000 employees, were spending their money locally. When the steel mill closed, that basic sector activity shuttered, and as a result, local demand collapsed, and we saw a negative multiplier effect. So the multiplier effect works both ways. As a local economy expands, the multiplier is positive. But if a local basic sector industry collapses, then that multiplier effect could be negative. So again, I encourage you to draw this model, to think about different examples of basic and non-basic activities, because this is one of the foundations of economic geography, understanding how an economy grows and how certain actions will benefit or negatively affect a certain region. Over the course of these lectures, we're going to examine the different sectors of the economy. And ask yourselves, what do we produce? What do we make here in the United States? I ask this question in class all the time, and there's usually a lot of hesitation. People step back and they think, right, what are we making here? When we look at our economy, we break it down into these four sectors: primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary. Now, this graph shows us trends. Down the bottom is time. Right now, we are in the post-industrial era. in the United States, and you'll see the rapid decline in primary, the rapid ascension of tertiary, the slow decline of secondary, and the late rise of quaternary. So think about what types of activities are practiced today that weren't practiced in the past or practiced in low numbers. Think about economic activities that included the majority of the population in the past that aren't practiced today. And that's where we're going to start with our look at each sector. The first sector that we're going to examine is the primary sector. The primary sector is also known as our raw material sector or our natural resources sector. The different activities that exist in the primary sector include farming, fishing, forestry, mining. This is a really important part of our sorry about that. This is a critical part of our economy. It's very small in terms of employment. There's only about 3% of the U.S. population works in the primary sector, but it's very essential. Think about our food source. One of the topics we covered in a previous chapter was the shift from subsistence to commercial agriculture. So in the past, one farmer fed 4 people per year. Today, with our commercial agriculture, one farmer feeds over 150 people per year. And when we look at our fishing fleets, many of our coastal cities dominated the economy in the past. Today they don't, but they remain critical as far as feeding a population. Forestry and mining provide our economy with building materials. So when we look at our primary sector, we've moved away from subsistence and we've moved to a larger commercialization chain. So when we look at fishing today, it's more intensive. When we look at farming today, it's more intensive. We are producing higher yields than ever before per farmer, per fisherman, per forestry agent. So the primary sector remains critically important, but it's not where people are working. When we look at views on primary product export, there are 2 main theories by McIntosh and Innes that help us understand what happens to an economy that's based heavily on primary sector activities. The first, by McIntosh, is known as the staple theory. And what McIntosh suggested is that investment in a primary sector activity opens future opportunities. And he called these forward linkages. Forward linkages is very similar to our multiplier effect. A forward linkage looks at the different businesses and employees that need to process the materials. So if we are simply extracting fish from the ocean on our fishing fleets, they need to be processed, they need to be frozen, they need to be distributed. So forward linkages examines those new opportunities, the new multiplier effect that's created. Backward linkages look at the different tools that a fishing fleet will need. So we look at the growth of shipyards. We look at the growth of refrigeration and truck distribution. We look at the different businesses that support the fishermen and their families. So we look at these backward linkages as what's expanding to support the economy, what's expanding to support those working. So we're growing demand, and consumer demand creates additional linkages. So when we look at a staple theory, we could look at a community like New Bedford, Massachusetts, that grew in the 19th century through whaling. The whaling industry allowed New Bedford to invest in other forms of fishing, other fisheries, into processing plants, distributions. The fishing industry helped fund factories, mills. So by having this natural resource, having proximity to whaling, New Bedford was able to harness that activity and grow it through forward and backward linkages and increasing demand to create a very wealthy community. Start it with whaling, expanded far beyond that.